I watched a lot of TV shows as a kid. However, the majority of them were episodic, as I didn't see the value of investing all this time in a plot that didn't mean all that much to me. That was until I first discovered shows with deep plots that I really enjoyed, such as Infinity Train and The Hollow. Now these shows were definitely great, but one show stood out to me like none other. This show was, of course, Robotech. Although it being a bit of an older show and the animation may have been a little spotty by today's standards, this show had everything a kid could ask for. A great group of villains, meaningful character development, and a sense of brotherhood between the pilots. I know Robotech is more of a niche show, but I and many other fans can appreciate the greatness of the show during its first groundbreaking season. So that's what I'll be talking about today. Before we start, remember to like and subscribe. It's best that we go through a bit of backstory for this show though. Surprisingly, the source material wasn't made by Western producers at all. Rather, it was dubbed from a Japanese anime, and the first and only season we'll be talking about today, the Macross Saga, lasted 36 episodes. Each episode spanned roughly 20 minutes, like any other cartoon at the time. To watch Robotech today, it's not necessary to subscribe to any program like Netflix. Rather, Robotech can be watched episode by episode on YouTube. While there is a lot more than only this season, including 2 movies, 2 seasons, and a potential upcoming live-action movie, none of those hold a candle to the greatness of the original source material nearly as well as Season 1 did. Many fans, including myself, can agree that the seasons following the Macross Saga were utter failures and provide no additional importance to the story at hand. Now that we got the origin of this show out of the way, let's get to exactly what makes Robotech so great. I'll start off with the characters. Apart from the main cast of Rick, Minmay, Lisa, Roy, Max, and Ben, one thing I've noticed about the show with more watches is that not many of the other characters that I didn't just mention don't often get a large amount of screen time. Thankfully, this has little impact on their character development, as we still get a very clear and detailed picture on things like the hierarchy of the Zentradi, the citizens of the SDF-1, and the government on Earth. There isn't a single character in this show that I don't like or isn't well written. Rick is a great protagonist to base the season around. He's charming, smart, and is a great critical thinker. He grows a lot through the show, to the point where his maturity at the end of the show is way higher than the start of the show. Next, Minmay is a really nice character who intertwines with Rick very well, while balancing her own goals such as being the biggest singer in the SDF-1. Lisa is also a very fitting character to run the ship and has a really touching backstory. Her bond with Rick is also something to behold, but more on that later. Ben and Max serve as great co-pilots along with Rick and Ben. More specifically, is a character that I really liked, as he was easily the show's most comedic personality. There are so many characters with different traits that everyone has their different favorites, and therefore, no one character stands directly above the others. Now it's on to what's most likely the strongest aspect of this show, the amazing storytelling. Any way you break it down, I can't find any holes in the storytelling at all. The pacing, the balance between war and romance, and the seemingly non-existent filler help take this from your standard action anime into a classic. While the plot isn't super deep, and it doesn't have a bunch of layers, what it does provide is straightforward and enjoyable. To give a brief summary of the plot, humans discover a spaceship and then rebuild it. This at first may sound like a great idea, but it signals a group of alien warriors, named the Zentradi, to go after the humans in the ship to try and take it back. This starts a high-stakes war between humans and the Zentradi that eventually ends in peace after both sides negotiate and come to peace. I've seen many space alien against humanity stories together, but none of them have had nearly as many twists and turns as this one. The constant attacks, destruction of ships, and even deaths to some of the characters do an excellent job of raising the stakes. I will admit that the animation of the show was average at best, but the writers made the most of it, trying to create a larger-than-life show that has a ton of replay value. The more and more I watch this show, the more apparent it becomes that the humans are more of the villains than the heroes than you may think. I can see quite a bit of influence that the show has had on future TV shows, trying to tackle the same audience. What made this show so refreshing though, was how it was slightly more mature than its competition at the time, making it new, less by the numbers, and more unique. The final section of this show I want to get into was its relationships between its characters and the love involved. There were a lot of instances in this show, so much so that it's impossible to ignore. The examples I can point to are Max and Maria, Roya and Claudia, and who could forget the love triangle between Rick, Minmay, and Lisa. I didn't really care for the Max and Maria storyline or Roya and Claudia that much, as it barely had an effect on the outcome of the show. The only ship I really paid attention to was Rick, Minmay, and Lisa's. I found it pretty interesting how as Rick grew more, he grew more distant from Minmay and slowly developed a deeper and deeper relationship with Lisa. Although Rick at the end of the show has completely moved on from Minmay and is now with Lisa, Minmay hasn't quite moved on yet. I personally thought that Rick and Lisa have a lot of chemistry together and seem to be the perfect match for each other. While these parts of the show don't really add up to much for the plot, I can see why some fans enjoy this aspect of it. And I will admit it was pretty engaging and very well written. As a kid, I really didn't like this part of the show and found it to only be the only negative of the show at the time. So while to this day I'm not the biggest fan of the relationship side of the show, I've definitely come to appreciate it a lot more than I used to. To summarize my thoughts on this show, I thoroughly enjoyed it and wish that the seasons past it would be at the same level of quality as this one. They were not. It's really easy to just turn on and watch 5 or even 6 episodes at a time without being distracted. It's just that good. There were a lot of cool details that I didn't originally notice, but when I did notice them, they added another layer of quality to this show. I haven't watched the original Japanese version of it, but I do know that the writers stayed very true to the source material, and the two are nearly identical. I've grown to truly appreciate this show, as it is really one of a kind. If you haven't checked Robotech out yet, you should definitely try it, as I would say this season is a certified classic. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and leave your comments down below.